felony warrant, they don't give you notice about it. They break your door down. But because he was in another county, he would have had to go through a lot of channels to make the arrest, so he invited me in. So what I did is I contacted a friend of mine who's a professional bail bondsman, and he was able to find out what the bonds were for these charges, and I met with him prior to surrendering myself and filled out all the paperwork. The following morning, I drove up to the Palm Beach County Jail, not to his office, which he was expecting me, and did what's called a voluntary surrender. And once they process you, which is a long process, but in my case wasn't so long, my bondsman was watching the screen, and as soon as the charges are read, he pressed a button, but it's electronic, and I was able to get in and out within 6 hours, which was an interesting thing. Knowing how to work the system and how to do it the right way, you can actually bond out of jail without seeing the judge.
So how much has this set back? Now, you've got two of your contractors, not exactly employees, that have been arrested, charged with burglary and everything else for changing a lockout after somebody called them to change a lock. Somebody was there at the residence, so he didn't break in. Somebody was there to tell him to change the lock. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, what happened was it was actually it was a police sting that they set up in that apartment, and the people in the apartment were actually undercover police. They wanted to see, when they knocked on the door, they asked him if he was, ABC Locksmith, and he said yes. And keep in mind that our name was similar to the other company, but it was legally registered in Florida, and he worked for other companies. So if they would have asked him any name, he's a locksmith. He needed a lock change. Names usually aren't important when you're changing a lock, as long as you, do the job correctly. So they put this all over the news. And I mean, in my case, I was the front page of the newspaper, which I have in my hand, in August of 2013. It was unbelievable. It says, "Police Beware Website Scheme." And the funny part of it was, our website, which before we did what we did, we contacted 3 attorneys, and all of them told us it's not a criminal act. Using a similar name, if anything, is a trademark violation or a civil suit if they choose to sue you for using a similar name. So it became very interesting that they turned a civil case into a major criminal case, front page of the newspaper. All the news stations were carrying it. It was an amazing thing. Unbelievable.
I mean, it would seem like there was some protection for you there, but I don't see that. If the police conspired to set you up for this, all based on a name, a registered name, did they have something else? Was there some other agenda here that they were trying to get you?
Well,
What's
they were trying to stop us.
Go ahead.
They were trying to stop us from using a similar name, but that's not the way you do it. In a normal case, if somebody has a name that's similar to your company, your radio station, and it's bothering you, you go to court and you file either a civil lawsuit, or you can send a cease and desist letter, but you can't go and arrest somebody. We have a company here that opened a coffee shop, and he named his coffee shop Stardust Coffee. Well, it's similar to Starbucks, and they're very upset about it. But the police can't go in and arrest him for it. They filed a civil lawsuit, and they're arguing it in court. And if he loses, he'll have to change the name. But it's not an arrest issue. It's not an issue where the guy should be put in handcuffs and charged with any type of a fraud. I mean, this is what they do here in Florida.
All right, let's continue your story. How are you dealing with this? I mean, I'm assuming here you had to hire your own attorneys to defend you against something that wasn't against the law. Is that accurate? In fact,
most of the attorneys told me what we did, if at best, was a trademark violation. 3 different attorneys reviewed the case. But, when you get charged with these serious charges, money laundering, organized scheme to defraud, Attorneys look at this like this is the case of the century. It was all over the news. So to begin with, I had to come up with a $50,000 retainer. And that doesn't include if the case goes to trial, and retainers are never refundable, and if you do go to trial, win or lose, the defendant loses because you don't get reimbursed for your bond cost or any of your legal fees, which is what I'm proposing a bill that's going to be introduced in a few months to change that. If a charge is dismissed against you or the jury finds you not guilty, it should work like a civil case. The defendant should be reimbursed. Why should we have to pay even if we win?
A $50,000 bond. You had to come up with $50,000. That would have knocked me out of the whole system here. I couldn't afford to do that.
Well, the bond amount was $17,000, and the way the bond system works is you have to put up 10%. So right away, you're out about $1,800 to the bondsman, not refundable. But the attorney's fees, the retainer, was $50,000, and that does not include if the case has to go to trial, and it only includes for, like 50 or 100 hours of his time. So these cases can milk a person to death, win or lose.
Again, who did you piss off? I mean, why would the police do this? Was it just because one other company that whose name was similar to the ones that you registered? Was it just one person with a little bit of pull in the police department, with friends in the police department? Were you able to track down this? Suddenly they're not suing you. They're having the police do their work to try to put you out of business, it sounds like to me.
Well, we had registered from three different or four different companies, and it's an interesting. In the city of Coral Springs, one of the companies we did it to, of course the guy was angry because, obviously he was losing some business to our similar name. So a few times he would find out about it, and he would call the police in Coral Springs, Florida. And when the police would call me, I actually spoke to the cop, and, he was like, this isn't nice what you're doing. I says, it's business. Competition is business. I says, is this a criminal case? And he actually said, no. He said, it's just not nice. He said, you can get sued for it. So when it happened in Palm Beach, evidently this one cop who, it's a small town and was friends with one of the companies, they can make a criminal case out of it. Remember, they could file the charges, they could get dismissed, but you still have to defend it and pay attorney's fees and court costs. And this is why I say, if the law was that the case was dismissed, could you imagine the state attorney would never file charges because they would have said, hey, if we file these charges, we're going to have to pay this guy back all his bond costs, all the charges for the attorneys, but they don't have to do that in the way the current system works. So it's no big deal to make them put a mortgage on their home or do whatever it takes to, bankrupt somebody in these cases.
All right. How did you handle this? Where do you go from here? Did you get into, were you in criminal court now?
No, my case, what happened was, they didn't want to dismiss all the charges against me because they felt, it was a very ingenious idea what we did, and how dare we do what we did. We're a small guy. If it was a big company like one of the big box stores that did it, they would never arrest them. But because we're a small guy and we don't have a lot of money, the state attorney came to me and said, look, there's a lot of public outcry from these other locksmiths, and there's a lot of, people. Some of the jobs that these guys did, weren't as good as the original companies that we used some independent contractors. There was a couple of complaints, which happens, nobody's perfect. What happened with me is they made me an offer. They said, if you go to trial and you lose, which is what they always say to you, we're going to ask for 20 years in state prison. If you want to do a plea, we'll drop all the felony charges and you'll plead guilty to 6 misdemeanors. There were 6 victims that supposedly were overcharged. Now remember, I never did anything or met these victims. So I said to myself, well, unfortunately, if I go to trial, my attorney said it's going to be $35,000 extra on top of the $60,000, which is not refundable if the jury comes back with a not guilty verdict. or I could pay some fines and some court costs and plead guilty to 6 counts of petty theft misdemeanor, and they offered to do what's called an adjudication withheld, which means actually there is no criminal conviction technically, and it was a misdemeanor. So I said to myself, well, I said, I really don't want to gamble with a trial, because if I lose, I'm going to go to jail for 20 years or close to it over a simple trademark infringement. So I actually wound up taking the plea reluctantly. And it had, it had a lot of, it was in the paper. It ruined my reputation because they mentioned all these things, which I really didn't care. It actually was good for my book because I teach a whole slew of things, how to get it erased from your record in the book and what to do when you're arrested and how to bond out. So it was a good experience, but a very costly one.
Well, this what happened to you happened to me about 20 some odd years ago. I was caught with marijuana in Texas and hired an attorney. Oh, I can get you 7 years, Clay. If you go before a jury, you could get 99 years in a Texas prison. 99 years was the potential penalty for possession of marijuana in Texas 20 years ago. 25, I guess, more than that. But these plea bargains, most cases don't even go to court. You don't even have a jury trial because they just want to populate the prisons or intimidate people. And I think the real criminals here are not people like you, or me for that matter. It's the attorneys, it's the judges, it's the whole legal system. How do you feel about your legal system? Are they working to protect you, or are they working for the corporations? Is this the good old boy system where if you know the judge? And by the way, the charge that I had in Texas was possession of marijuana, and the judge that gave me the deal ended up getting busted with a Western wear mogul here in Texas who was running tons of marijuana into Texas, and the judge actually got time or got convicted for that, considerably more marijuana than I had. How do you feel about this whole system? I mean, it's the same, and I've lived in Florida, and I've lived in Texas, and been to a number of states. It's the same no matter what state you go to, isn't it? What have you found out? What's your research showing here? Who's the bad guys here? Where is this coming from? I mean, is our whole judicial system really at fault here?
Absolutely. The reason it's at fault is they treat criminal cases different than civil cases. In a civil case, if I file a lawsuit against you and I win, I can recover court costs and attorney's fees. And this is what I'm trying to change. Why shouldn't it be the same for a criminal case? After all, when they arrested the 2 independent contractors, they were fully aware that they opened up the door. They never broke in. There was no break-in. They let him in. He changed the lock. They paid him. They just wanted to file charges. Now, filing these charges, if my new bill, the Merkatz Wrongful Compensation Act, would have been in effect, the way it would work is anybody arrested that's found not guilty by trial on all counts, or the state attorney decides not to prosecute it after they cost them the money, these guys would have been repaid $100 a day for every day they spent in jail. They would have been reimbursed all bond costs, court costs, and attorney's fees. And we both know that they never would have filed these charges or arrested them if they knew the state was going to be out, like between the 3 of us, $200,000 in costs and legal fees. They wouldn't have filed it. They would have told these locksmiths, listen, if the guy's name is too similar to you, you go to court, get an injunction, which is the way it should have been done, and stop him. and that's what should happen. But as long as they can arrest people and there's no consequences for it, and it's not going to cost the state has taxpayer money to play with. But the person like me was out $60,000, even if I went to trial and was found not guilty and paid the other $35,000, I would have had a clean record. But on the other hand, I'd be out another $35,000. So that's why a lot of people take pleas, because of money and fear. The fear factor of 20 years in prison for using a similar name to attract some business, and the money factor of never being reimbursed if you are found not guilty, is what's forcing everybody to plead guilty to crimes they didn't commit.
One of my particular, what I consider important, what I consider that needs to be done here, is instead of populating our prisons with innocent people, we need to abolish all the laws against victimless crimes. If there ain't a victim, there ain't a crime. Was there a victim in your so-called crime? None, was there?
Well, the only victim is the companies that were losing business to our similar name. But this goes on every single day. There are companies, if you watch the news every day, there's trademark issues every day. A big phone company comes out with a product, and his competitor steals the idea, but they don't arrest them. They go to court, and they battle it out, and they negotiate it. It's not something that a police officer gets involved in. There's been so many cases. Every time I turn on the news, this big manufacturer is suing this one because he's using a product and mentioning the name. Again, it's not a criminal case, and they turned this into a criminal case, and it cost us all this money, ruined reputations, and it's a sad thing.
All right, let's again move forward here, and how has all this been dispensed with? How what's the final story here? And then I want you to tell people about the book, because you really got a lot more information than we've covered here. So let's elucidate a little bit on this. Tell me about what's in your book, what you hope to accomplish, and what the resolution on this arrest was.
Well, in my case, the reason I wrote the book is because there were hundreds of people every hour of the day that are being wrongly arrested and wrongly convicted, and a lot of people don't know what to do or how to handle an arrest. And I have stories in there of people that never did anything wrong in their life, that just got pulled over for a traffic stop over a ticket, and they didn't realize their license was suspended, and they get arrested and they don't know how to get out of jail. They sit there for days. So I have a chapter on how to get out of jail without seeing a judge. Unless it's a violent crime, minor offenses, shoplifting, or anything like that, you can actually get out of jail within a couple of hours if you know how to work the system properly and bond out instead of sitting in there. Then I have an interesting chapter in there on stealing and expunging. Can you imagine being arrested? There was a guy in Florida for armed robbery, kidnapping, and rape. And then 5 weeks later, they release you and say, we got the wrong man. On this man's record, it says armed kidnapping, rape, aggravated assault, case dismissed. Now, if he goes for a job, he's not going to be able to get it, because they're not going to look at the case dismissed. They're going to say, this guy, they probably just didn't have the right evidence. So I have a chapter on there, which most states allow, to actually seal or expunge it from the record so that he can say he never was arrested, and it actually erases it. That's one of the best chapters in the book, how to do that. Now, unfortunately, there are some states that don't expunge. If you live in one of those states, I have an article in my book on how to get your civil rights restored so that you can still vote if you're found guilty, and get your gun licenses, which a lot of people want to have these days. So I have a lot of information in there. When to take a plea, when not to take a plea, what to do in a traffic stop. So I go through a whole thing, and I have a legal glossary of all the terms in the back of the book. And I actually have my whole story with cases where I actually won in Florida a landmark decision, Merkatz versus the Department of State in 1989 over a gun permit. That was a good story also.
Your book, where can can people get that? Who are you getting it published by, or?
It's published by Prominent Book Publishing. It was actually #1 on Amazon.com from the months of June and July. It's available at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Books A Million. Soon, the second edition that's going to be coming out in a few months is actually going to be available in most bookstores. But right now, it can be ordered. If you go into any of the bookstores, they'll have it in a day for you. And I have the website, wronglycharged.com. If anybody wants to look up information, I have a lot of interesting stuff on that. The book is $17.95, or the ebook is $7.99, which you can download.
All right, and I do have links for that, Wrongly Charged. I have links for that up on my website, freeamerican.com. And even got some videos up there. I believe I put that up on Facebook. So, where are you going from here? You're going to write this second book here.
Well, an interesting thing happened. And remember when I told you I pled guilty to the 6 counts of misdemeanor and paid restitution? Well, a year and a half later, this is new, it's going to be in my new book, I had received a call from the Attorney General's office to come in for an interview. And he was like, you know, you pled guilty to these 6 counts. I said to him, look, I'm not sorry for what I did. You registered these names legally. You could have said no. And unfortunately, in the state of Florida, in 2010, which I explained to him, you proposed locksmith legislation would actually completely address what I did, using a name that's other than what you have your licenses for and all of that. And the bill died, so there has no regulation. How dare you tell me that you want to fine me or charge me again for the same thing civilly? He says, well, you know, we're going to make you an offer. So a couple of weeks ago, they sent me an offer. Give them $60,000, $10,000 a victim, on top of what I paid them, and legal fees. So I actually told them, take the case to a jury or a judge. You're not getting a dime. I'm not going to be tried for the same thing twice. He says, well, it's not the same thing. It's a civil case. So on Friday last week, they actually filed a complaint, the Attorney General's office, for unlawful trademark violations, and they want me to pay a fine. Well, they're not going to get a dime, because this case, I will fight this case all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and on my websites now, I'm going to be giving out the phone numbers of the Attorney General that orchestrated this, links to his home address, his phone number, so all my listeners that I do my shows for can call him up and tell him that this is an unlawful thing. After a year and a half later, and mind you, I'm not in the locksmith business for a year and a half. They waited a year and a half later, and this guy, Fiorio Gentelli of Fort Lauderdale, wants to fine me $60,000 for the same 6 victims that I paid restitution to.
That's pretty incredible. Is this just haven't made very many friends there in Florida, have you?
No, well, unfortunately, when I published this book, and I gave out all the information of what happened, it's, you know, being #1 on Amazon, it sold a lot of books and it aggravated people. But they want to teach me a lesson. But the thing is, they thought because I pled guilty the first time in the criminal case, which I did as a convenience, I was going to just give them a check for $60,000. Well, let me tell you this. They're looking for the battle of their life. I'm going to have every media contact that I know in the courtroom, and it's going to be worse than the O.J. Simpson trial when I get done, unless they dismiss these charges. After all, I'm not in the business for a year and a half. Why wait a year and a half later to file civil penalties for something that I already paid the victims their restitution? I don't think the state, since has no regulations, we don't have a guideline here in Florida how to go, how to advertise, has the right to say that what we did was unfair and deceptive when they proposed a law which actually addressed it, and it died, and the bill died. And I have proof of all these things. So it's going to be an interesting battle in the court when it comes up in a few weeks or a month.
Well, I wish you all of the best on this. Are you back into the locksmith business here? Can people get a hold of you if they're in Florida?
No, I don't do I actually got rid of the company because of all the controversy, and I'm busy writing the second book, which has even more information than the first book. It's going to go into detail, and it's going to be interactive in a few languages, and we now have a new chapter to add that when the state couldn't win, they refiled charges again in a civil way. So it's going to be an interesting, probably be on the news very soon.
All right, sir. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. I don't think we can cover much more, and I've got some things that I want to get out. So I'm going to let you go today.
Okay. All right. Thanks for having me on.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Really appreciate what you've been through and what you've done. Hope everybody picks up your book. Again, tell them it's Wrongly Accused is the name of the book, right?
No.
What?
It's Wrongly Charged.
Wrongly Charged.
Wrongly Charged, a look at the legal system.
All right, David. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. And again, I told you, and we missed this in the first part of this recording here for YouTube, and I think it's important enough to repeat it. Every year, Jackson Hole High School has celebrated America Day around homecoming time, and it's become quite the spectacle. The tradition includes students wrapping American flags around their shoulders, wearing American flag attire, and driving a diesel truck around the parking lot with stars and stripes waving in the wind. But this year turned out to be different for the students in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Activities Director Mike Hansen canceled America Day this year to ensure no students were offended by this display of American pride. And, I mean, what could be... The reason I'm sharing this story with you is you need to understand that there's a war against Americans, white Americans, Christians, and this is just one small segment of it. Mike Hansen said many different students could have felt singled out. Maybe they moved here last week. Maybe they moved here last month, he told the Jackson Hole News and Guide. We're trying to balance many different things here. We're trying to be inclusive and safe and make everyone feel welcome. In keeping with the American spirit, several high school students got extremely creative and defiant on homecoming week. One parent, Ted Dawson, was extremely proud of how his kids responded to the ban on America Day, and he let everyone know about it on Facebook. He said, it's homecoming week and our school administration thought it was too offensive to have an American Pride Day, so this is my kids' answer to that. Where have we gone so wrong? I don't care what race or religion you are. You live here, benefit from the schools, enjoy tax benefits or whatever. You're an American, or at least you better be. And we've got pictures of the kids, the teenagers, wearing the American flag, red, white, and blue shorts. Superman capes with the American flag on it. The Jackson Hole News and Guide also reported that many students still donned their red, white, and blue on Wednesday, but Principal Scott Crisp claimed that 3 times as many students indicated that they were not in support of selecting the title America Day. I'm charged with looking at a school with 660 kids. I have to ensure that all those kids feel part of a student body. Regardless of the name of the day, we want to ensure that activities of the week bring our students together holistically as a student body, the principal said. I'm telling you, this is just amazing to me. I'm having a real hard time understanding what the hell is wrong with you. I mean, is this the result of fluoride? Is this a result of drugs? Is this a result of television? And why are we showing preference to Muslims, blacks? Why are whites the only racist? I mean, this is part of the information, and I'm going to be talking about that later. I've got a few other stories up here that I think are important and we need to see. Is it getting to the point that we would be better off supporting Russia, which isn't communist anymore? We've got Russia and Putin that's more American than anybody in America. Now, in a matter of weeks, we will watch Russia take back Syria, ending the reign of Jewish proxy terror. Many ISIS guns for hire are now fleeing for their lives. They are war criminals after all. Syria is now in ruins. Millions have been displaced. 250,000 killed. Why? No Rothschild central bank. As of October 2015, 230,000 in Syria have been killed, 7 million displaced. And the war crimes, Jewish war crimes in Syria are up in the thousands, over 6,000. Russia's entry into the Levant has turned the tide. Now Israel is up against the bear just a few hundred miles away. No longer can Israel fly sorties with impunity. In a few weeks it'll be over and Syrians can return home after Christmas. Europe needs only give them safe passage back home. Syrians need to live in Syria, not Germany, Sweden, or Russian area state. ISIS is an Israeli operation clearing the Middle East of Arabs. The Jews don't just want Assad gone. Hell, they want all Syrians gone too. The huge refugee crisis is exactly what they are manufacturing with terror. Old Testament style terror where whole villages are beheaded. Only the Jews wage war like this. And that's how you know ISIS is Israel. The Israeli State Intelligence Service is ISIS. And we've got pictures here of thousands of refugees. Make no mistake about this, Jews did this to Syria. Look what was done in the name of America. Look at the magnitude of this crime, all justified by 9/11, by that engineered false flag done by Israel. We need regime change in America. We need Obama and the neocons toppled. Obama is one of the worst criminals and mass murderers in history. What Obama has done is a war crime, and he should immediately be arrested along with all of his Jewish staff. It's not funny. This is not a joke. His orders are that of a Rothschild. He's simply a puppet of the Jewish money power that runs America. Obama is a disgusting mass murderer, a pathological liar that no head of state should even listen to. He's a evil joke. Putin, on the other hand, is a hero. He is stopping the Talmudic insanity in Syria, restoring order in a state fractured by Israel and the Jews. He will stop these terrorist insurgents, many of them foreigners, mercenaries, being organized and paid by the CIA. So is this Obama character. He's a highly trained asset of the Jewish power structure, enabling the Jewish world order by deception. Obama is a Rothschild mold. Let's hear from Obama. He says, "I am not incompetent. I'm destroying America more quickly than anyone thought possible. I am not in over my head. I am advancing totalitarianism right under your noses. I'm not stupid. The stupid are those who fail to see the danger I bring. I'm not failing. I'm succeeding at every goal I have set. I am embracing your enemies and rejecting your friends. I am acting lawlessly and unconstitutionally. I am ignoring your Constitution. I am disobeying your laws. Your media is abetting me. Your Congress is not stopping me. Those sworn to defend your Constitution are not removing me. I am fundamentally transforming the United States of America. Your Constitution, liberty, freedom, wealth, future, and children are no longer at risk. The risk is past. They are already lost." As Russia drives out the rats infesting Syria, Obama and the Jewish-controlled media have ratcheted up their propaganda, whining about their ISIS fighters being killed and the CIA training camps taken out. Pay no attention to the evil Jew media, the New York Times or the JewTube. All lies. 3,000 terrorists leave Syria following Russian airstrikes, says military source. Russia will walk the air sorties across the northern Levant right into Iraq. Iranian ground forces will mop up the Jewish proxy fighters. In just weeks, the entire northern area will be CIA, ISIS, Jew-free. Russia is already considering Iraqi requests for airstrikes. See the truth behind Obama's lies. Putin is mopping up Israel's ISIS fighters. And there's a line drawn here across Iraq and Syria and Lebanon. This area is now off limits to evil Israel. ISIS executes 70 Sunni tribesmen in Iraq. The slain had relatives fighting alongside Iraqi military. According to locals familiar with the situation, ISIS has carried out another mass execution in Iraq's Anbar province, killing 70 members of the Abu Nimr tribe in Khanzir village on Sunday night. The Abu Nimr tribe has repeatedly resisted ISIS and seen several massacres as a result. So who's next in line? Afghanistan wants Russia's help too. Kabul needs Russian help in the fight against terrorist group Islamic State. This was first announced by the first Vice President of Afghanistan, General Abdul Rashid Dostum, following the meeting with the head of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov. Dostum said that ISIS is trying to make a foothold in Afghanistan. To prevent this threat, Kabul needs Russian support, as in Syria. We are confident that the Russian leadership will make a positive decision in this matter, wrote Kadyrov on his social network page. And got a picture here of the Antichrist and his false prophet fat bastard John Hagee promotes the pro-Israeli viewpoint for Netanyahu. Russia sends special forces into Syria. With Russia's deputy army chief due in Israel, Moscow post 64 S-300 ship-to-air missiles off of Syria and North Israel. And in Israel, the holiest of cities, was under siege in 597 BC, 587 BC, 63 AD, 70 AD, 1099 AD, 1187 AD, 1244 AD, and now in the near future as the last refuge of Jewish scum. Alright, let's see what else we've got. Alright, this story, Oregon Sheriff. The Oregon Sheriffs here. Oregon sheriffs testify before the House. We're not going to enforce your gun-grabbing law. Tim Brown provided this article. He says, earlier this week I wrote about Josephine County Sheriff Dave Daniel took a stand along with other constitutional sheriffs in Oregon. And issued a statement to the media that he would not enforce the requirement of Senate Bill 941, which puts tighter restrictions on Oregon citizens concerning the sale of firearms. This week, sheriffs from across the state testified to representatives that they would follow the sentiment of Daniel and not enforce the bill should it become law. Tammy Jackson at Saving Our Future provided the following video of the testimony of those sheriffs. This is Douglas County Sheriff John Hanlon, Grant County, Oregon Sheriff Glenn Palmer will not comply with the gun registration laws.
Thank you, Sheriff. You're law enforcement, obviously. I'm trying to picture how you would envision this law being enforced. I could see it being a burden if people actually obeyed it, but I don't picture it being enforceable, therefore it's ignorable, and if it's ignorable, it wouldn't be respected, and if you don't respect the law, it will breed more disrespect for the law. Other laws, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, I just don't picture it being enforceable the way it is. What is your opinion?
Senator Thatcher, I don't have any idea how it's going to be enforced, but I will tell this committee I have no intentions of enforcing it. To me, when two people meet at the trunk of a car or in their driveway or in their house or in somebody's private property, when you have a piece of private property, that whether it's a 12-gauge shotgun or a 9mm handgun, who am I as a police officer to say what happens in the back room in their store or in their garage or in their house? How am I as a police officer supposed to police something like this? I think it's unenforceable. And I have no intentions of enforcing this law. State law allows me to use discretion on misdemeanors, and I plan to use it every step of the way.
Yeah, right. A sheriff here. See what else we got. There's another sheriff. So, this should be encouraging to you. We've got sheriffs that are speaking out against this whole communist agenda, gun control, and mind you, the gun control agenda is communist. There's no other explanation. This is what they do. This is the Yamhill County Sheriff who opposes the gun control.
For the record, Tim Swenson, Sheriff, Yamhill County. This is a letter that I submitted to the Senate, and I was going to read it here for the record, for the House. This letter is to share my opposition to Senate Bill 941. All too often we are quick to act when it comes to gun violence, and we attempt to pass new laws that only affect law-abiding citizens. Senate Bill 941 will not provide any additional protection of Oregon citizens against violence. Criminals will still be able to access weapons by other means, and those people who commit these heinous crimes do not follow the laws we currently have in place. Senate Bill 941 will create new layers of legal barriers to already law-abiding citizens. Many citizens in my county enjoy the sport of shooting and hunting and often buy, sell, and transfer guns in a legal manner. My fear with Senate Bill 941 is that these citizens will now become risk of being charged and prosecuted for acts they have done several times before with no negative effect on our community. As with many of these laws, it becomes very difficult for law enforcement to enforce, and there is no consideration of the financial impact on the already stressed court system and background check process already in place. It is my understanding that the Senate has made it clear that this bill will be pushed through no matter what. However, as an elected official, it is my duty to voice my concerns. It is the duty of all elected officials to listen to both sides of the table prior to making an informed decision. I do not feel this has occurred in this case, and I urge you to listen to your elected sheriffs who are opposed to this bill. As a sheriff of Yamhill County, the citizens elected me to be their voice in Salem when it comes to these issues. I swore to protect citizens I serve by keeping guns out of the hands of criminals. I also swore to not infringe on the rights of law-abiding citizens. Because of this, I'm opposed to Senate Bill 941 and urge you to reconsider this bill. If you have further questions of me, please feel free to contact me at any time at my office. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I want to see if I can find something. Oh, well, let's see. Let's do this first. Here's Piers Morgan versus Ted Nugent. We'll listen to this. Well, I'm looking for an interview that I did with one of these ADL people.
Turn off your cell phone. Shut down Facebook immediately. You really need to hear this, and 7 minutes is all I need. You're going to hear something that every other person has been too frickin' scared to tell you. But I'm breaking this cone of silence because I'm sick of the games, I'm sick of the hype, and I'm sick of the BS we've all been fed. But I'm going to put a stop to it. Right now.
And so I just come back once more to the motivation for why you now do so much stuff.
Because I've learned that freedom is not free, and I found that the reason the whole world sucks and America sucks less is because the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, outlines an experiment where freedom rules the day of individuality, and that can only be secured by crushing those enemies that would take it away. So those warriors that put themselves in the face of that evil enemy, and anybody who would take away our individual rights and our individual freedoms, they're the enemy. They need to be killed. And the guys that went over and did that, they paid the ultimate sacrifice.
For a man who is a patriot, who purports to love his country, that was quite shocking disrespect to your president.
Let me put it in official CNN Piers Morgan
Yes.
interview terms, shall I?
Yes.
My limey friend?
Yes.
Anybody that wants to disarm me can drop dead. anybody that wants to make me unarmed and helpless, people that want to literally create the proven places where more innocents are killed, called gun-free zones, we're going to beat you. We're going to vote you out of office, or suck on my machine gun. You can take it whichever way you want.
Much as I'd love to suck on your machine gun, the whole point of your defense is that a lot of people do drop dead, precisely because you are armed to the teeth, and you'd like everybody else to be.
Not true at all.
80 people...
Write this down. See, you're so rich.
You write this down. 80 people a day die in America from gunshots.
And 75 of them to 78 of them, statistics by the Uniform Crime Report by the FBI and the UN Study on Violent Crime, 78 of those 80 are let out of their cages by corrupt judges and prosecutors who know that recidivism is out of control, know that they'll commit the crimes again, and they let them walk through plea bargaining, early release, and programs.
They still
Kiss
can't...
my ass.
Yeah.
Where you have the most armed citizens in America, you have the lowest violent crime rate. Where you have the worst gun control, you have the highest crime rate. Pierce, choose one. Do you want a lot of crime? We have it. Gun-free zones. Do you want less crime? We have that. More people with concealed weapons permit. Why do you guys resist that statistic?
Well, don't say you guys.
It's you guys.
No.
Well, unless you're playing the devil's advocate.
I can play any advocate I like.
You're
It's
doing
my
a fine
show.
job.
Right.
You're playing the idiot's advocate here.
That's not the idiot's
More
advocate.
guns equals less crime. Period.
Unless I'm wrong, and I don't want to kiss,
I'll be sure to let you know,
your ass at this point, if you don't mind. Unless I'm wrong with your argument, well, you're basically saying that 90% of the gun crime comes from people let out of prison.
It's 96%.
Right.
But go ahead.
But they still have to get access to firearms. If you had your way, there would be 10 times as many firearms, right?
Not true at
You
all.
want everyone in America to own a gun?
Not at all. I've never said that.
What's your position?
And I got to tell you,
what is your position?
And I hope you don't edit this out. Whenever I've done interviews with guys that are inclined to be anti-gun, they always go, well, Nugent wants everybody to have a machine gun. Nugent wants all the deer dead.
What does Nugent want?
Not even close.
What do you want?
What I want is the Second Amendment. We the people, free individuals to have the right to keep and bear arms for self-defense. No. Find fault with that.
Oh, well, I can find lots of fault with it.
Name one.
Well, the reality is...
I'll write one down.
Well, you end up with what happened to Gabby Giffords in Tucson earlier this year.
That guy had gone through the cracks of the mental health system. That guy had
How
given
could
all
he be allowed
kinds...
to get a gun?
Because he fell through the cracks, and he didn't qualify to get a gun.
He fell through the cracks.
The cracks of the mental health system. Everybody knew. All his friends, his family was afraid of this guy, but they didn't report it. Nobody reacted to it.
When you see a guy like that, get open access to firearms, because the Constitution that you subscribe adhere to so much.
How would you fix that?
Well, I would certainly make it a lot harder for people like him to ever get near a firearm. And that's my argument with the gun lobby, is that it's always very, very aggressive. And even as you've just exploded with me, it's always a violent debate. And it's always like, I want the right to shoot anyone that comes near me who's threatening me. But it's always about that. This guy was unstable, but was able to go and get a firearm because they are freely available in this country. Now, and that's where I have a problem with it.
Were you born in England?
I was born in England.
Okay, are you familiar with Ireland?
I am.
Is Molotov cocktails and C4 explosive, those legal in Belfast?
They're terrorists.
Are those items legal in Belfast?
Well, I don't live in Belfast.
Well, then I'll go ahead and educate you. They're banned in Belfast. They're forbidden in Belfast. Do you think anybody had a hard time getting them? If you want something, how about in New York City? It doesn't mean you take me 15 minutes for me to get a submachine gun in New York City from some paroled crack
Let me spin the argument. Would you allow drugs then to be freely available?
Not at all.
What's the difference in the argument?
Because drugs are 100% about reducing your level of responsibility, getting high, disconnecting. And I'm a cop. I've been a cop for 35 years. I conduct federal raids with the heroes of law enforcement in Texas. In every instance where there is violence, somebody's high on something, but they're not always in possession of a firearm. They do it with Buicks and bricks and fire and chainsaws and pipes.
The guy who shot Gabby Giffords wasn't high. So it wasn't a factor.
Nobody was mentally deranged.
My point about the thread of your argument is you're saying there's a difference, isn't there, between you're saying guns should be made freely available. Right?
No, there should be restrictions.
Let me put something to you. If you think it's wrong, tell me. They should be made available with some restrictions, but not many, from the gun lobby arguments I've read. And actually, right now, the reason is if you made them illegal, they'd all be freely available anyway. But with drugs, you say do not make them freely available, make them illegal, even though you know and I know that drives them underground and probably more people get access to them.
Pierce, I
What's
don't
the
know
difference?
why you guys either don't study the information or you just resist it. I think you're resisting it. In America, where you have more citizens with guns on their person, you have a dramatic reduction in violent crime. In those areas called gun-free zones, you have an outrageous increase in the loss of innocent lives. That's the choice. Which one would you make? And in America, legally owned guns are used millions of times a year to save innocent lives. You certainly don't believe in calling 911 to stop evil in your home, do you? You don't believe that being unarmed and helpless is a desirable condition? You think unarmed and helpless is something you can control over me? That's weird.
Well, you're putting a lot of words into my mouth. What I do believe is where you dramatically increase the prevalence of guns, more people will die from guns.
No.
And you don't believe that.
Not only do I believe it, the FBI doesn't believe it. The FBI recent report, in those jurisdictions where more people have concealed weapons permits, that doesn't mean a gun in the truck or in the safe. It means a gun in their belt. In those jurisdictions, you have not only a dramatic decrease in violent crime, but a personal assault type crimes, carjacking, rape, home invasions. They don't just go down, Pierce. They go away. Now that you know that, why wouldn't you help me create more safe areas?
When we come back, we'll talk about what we're supposed to be talking about, which is President Obama.
Are you an American citizen now?
Not yet.
Well, I'll help you.
A British citizen.
You're just hanging out with me as a feather in your cap.
It's probably putting me off.
Somebody bring him a gun.
Are you?
This was Ted Nugent on television with Piers Morgan. Yeah, let me see here. Still haven't found what I'm looking for here. Let's try this. Try this here. Go to the window. There's media here. Looking for it. Stop it, boys. Stop it, boys. All right. Barbara Hardwell, huh? Barbara Hardwell, well, we'll just kick her right out. And Simile Live kicking him, too. Simile Live says, I'm from New York. Well, that's that explains a lot. Ignorant son of a bitch. No, I'm not taking calls from Barbara Hardwell or Scumley. I say, because it's my show and I'll do whatever I want. Alright, so much for that. Now let me again try to I found it 2 or 3 times when I'm going through. Got too much to go through. Got too much to go through here. And we'll see if see what we got here. Trying to find something. There we go. All right. I found it. This is somebody that's comparable to Scumley here. And I want you to see what we got to deal with.
Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas, publisher of the Free American News Magazine. Now, I've got a guest today, Lee Kaplan, investigative reporter, and basically an Israeli supporter, Israel supporter, aren't you, Lee?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Clay.
All right, sir. And I had it on my notes here that we were going to talk about President-elect Obama, and I'd like to share an open letter that I did to Obama with you and get some of your comments on that. I'm just going to do a couple of paragraphs here. When you're sworn in as president, you will take the oath that all of our police officers, soldiers, and veterans have taken regarding support of our Constitution. We expect you to live up to that oath. If you do, you will have the full support of the Free American and all of our readers and listeners, as well as the vast majority of the citizens of this nation. But here are a few of the issues we request you address immediately. First, please put to rest the question of your birth status as requested by Philip Berg, who is now going through the Supreme Court regarding the requirement that you be a natural-born citizen of the United States. Please clear up the place of your birth by fully cooperating and providing all of the necessary documentation as to your status in regards to Kenya, Indonesia, and Hawaii. We do not need this question haunting you in the first days of your...
All right, hold on just a second here. We've got to reconnect here. Reconnect on Skype. We've lost that. TV! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Get out of here! Sam got out. Careful. Don't let him hurt you. Get back, boys.
Come on, you get out of here.
Let me help you.
Out of here.
Go on, Sam.
Get out of this room, we'll be okay.
He's getting loose. All right, we're getting hooked back up here.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio.
The pin you entered does not match the pin you have installed. To start your show now, press 1. To hear important...
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we're reconnecting you now.
All right, we're back here. Just a second, let's get hooked back up on this.
Where's Bandit?
I don't know. I think he's in the bedroom. Or Sam ate him. All right, back on Truth Radio, back on Blog Talk, and what I'm doing here is sharing a recording I made with a Jew by the name of Lee Kaplan.
Administration. Would you agree with that?
I think you're wasting your time. Number one, the election's over, and they're not going to go into this and pull the president down. You know, I have a lot of misgivings about what's going on with Obama already, which we can discuss on the show. But you know, this is old party, you know, Republican RNC tactics that failed, and we need to move forward.
Now, Bill Berger's a lifelong Democrat.
Well, yeah. I mean, look. You know, there's so much stuff that gets said in print, the things you put together, that you know you can't believe everything you read. He's a lifelong Democrat. Okay, yeah. If I said to you on the radio today, I'm a lifelong member of the independent, of the American Independent Party, for example, George Wallace's old party, you would go by my saying that is true, but it's not. You understand? And concentrating on this stuff is a waste of time. Nobody's going to bring the president down with this birth certificate thing. And the courts threw it out. They tried this tactic before. They tried it in California with Jerry Brown. He was running for the Attorney General out here in California. They called it guilty.
All right, Truth Radio. I am getting tremendous interference on Truth Radio here. Tremendous interference. I got the volume turned up too high, and hopefully we can get that fixed here. Alright, that's a little bit better. Better.
Would have moved back when he was the governor, rightly so to some degree. But he ran to the Attorney General. He hadn't practiced law in 20 years, so they tried.
We're listening to Lee Kaplan, a Zionist, and he's about to get on to me for having the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. I'm sorry, man. I can't deal with this static here that I'm getting from Truth Radio. All right. Go ahead, Lee.
To, use that as a basis to keep him from running for the Attorney General. And the courts threw it out because they didn't want to stop the election, and then after the election, they just dropped it. So it's the same thing with Obama. By the way, I didn't vote for Obama. I didn't vote for McCain either. And there are reasons for this. I'm not happy with what Obama has done. In one sense, is appointing Robert Malley back to his foreign affairs advisors and sending Malley over to literally kiss the behind of the Syrians over there.
Well, let me ask you, let me read the second paragraph that I was going to read, because I'm sure you'll have a comment on this one. Second, please reconsider your choice of Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel by appointing someone without a questionable dual loyalty to another country. We realize that Israel is considered a friendly country, but it has a history of spying here in America. No other country should take precedent over the needs and directions that the United States is going in. The situation in the Middle East has a lot of questions that need to be answered and issues dealt with fairly. The Palestinian situation is one, the Iraq and Iran another. We feel the United States should follow the advice of our founders and first president, George Washington, and stay out of foreign entanglements. We have the freedom of religion here that no other country in the world has. That means that here, Christians, Muslims, and Jews can live and work together for the good of the country. Taking sides in a Jewish-Muslim conflict could lead to another world war with Russia, China, and Pakistan. We need to withdraw our troops from any countries we are now occupying and let the people of those countries decide their direction and remove or replace tyrants as they deem necessary. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think you should tear the whole letter up because it's nonsense. First of all, when you talk about Rahm Emanuel, you're talking about a guy who's been a lifelong U.S. citizen and has served in political office in the United States.
His father was.
Yeah, I know. His father was in the Irgun in 1948, and he emigrated to the United States. And his son is a U.S. citizen and has served in U.S. government. You make accusations of dual loyalties. I'm not sure what that means, dual loyalties. If you support fellow democracies overseas, does that mean you have dual loyalties? He doesn't work for the Israeli government. When you talk about, spying on the... Well, let me finish here. You asked me to listen to your letter and give you my responses to it. When you talk about dual loyalties, I'm not sure what you mean by dual loyalties. If you support fellow democracies... Excuse me?
Michael Chertoff, for instance.
Well, see, that we talked about that last week. It's nonsense. Michael Chertoff's mother was from Israel, so by Israeli law, if he wanted to, he could go to Israel and have automatic citizenship. That's what you were talking about. Michael Chertoff doesn't have dual citizenship. He's eligible for Israeli citizenship if he wants it because of his mother's ancestry. And apparently it's not an issue with him. He doesn't want to be a citizen of Israel. But even if he did, so what? The fact of the matter is that Israel's a democracy. It's ranked up there on freedom.org, the same as Britain and the United States, in terms of one of the few countries in the world that is a true democracy. See, and you were discussing with me how you saying the Anti-Defamation League was after you. After going through your website and after hearing things like this, I can understand why. Now, you're an intelligent fellow, Clay. You told me that you have an IQ higher than the average person. You should be able to see the forest for the trees. The people that orchestrate these things against Israel and hate Israel and accuse people of dual loyalties and stuff are the same people who are supporting the people who want to bring down the U.S. Constitution. These are the jihadis. These are the clerical fascists. These are the Hamas. These are the Hezbollah. These are the Iranians. The letter I just heard you read almost throws support to Iran, which is completely contrary to the U.S. Constitution. They want to destroy the U.S. Constitution. These aren't people who are supporting democracy. These aren't people who are supporting freedom. These aren't people who are supporting America or America's Constitution. These are people who, incidentally, this is World War III that we're in. We're at war with these people. So, I mean, let's get on the program. Let's
we're at war with the Muslims? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, we're at war with the Muslims. What do you think blew up the World Trade Center in 2001 and blew up the Pentagon? Al-Qaeda. What does Al-Qaeda mean? Al-Qaeda is Arabic for the base. Al-Qaeda are Muslim fundamentalist extremists who attack the United States because they deem us to be the Kafirs, or the non-Muslims. If you go and you need to get into a wider circle on your website there, Clay, you've got to understand that the people that you're running around in your conspiracy theories and things, calling for us to support against Israel and against Jews, because we'll get into that Protocols of Zion on your site also, are in fact the people who don't want to preserve the U.S. Constitution. And see, and another thing which I have to say to you, Clay, and I don't mean to embarrass you, but I think you should be embarrassed, is the fact that the number of Jewish war veterans in World War II and World War I, even the Civil War, throughout history, American Jews who fought for this country and died for this country, and then were mistreated, is outrageous. And what you're doing...
They were mistreated in this country? I don't think they mistreat Jews in this country.
Well, you're wrong. Well, you're wrong, because anti-Semitism in this country, it's better than it was. You've heard of the Jewish war veterans? The reason why they started the Jewish war veterans was that after World War II, a lot of Jews who had served honorably in the army in World War II weren't allowed to join veterans of foreign war posts because they were Jews. They were excluded. Let me tell you something else about prejudice against Jews in this country. Blacks have traditionally been unfairly treated. They were slaves at one point in this country, and yes, there was discrimination, and they were not treated as equal citizens. And Jews were actually the co-founders of the NAACP, were helped to turn that around. Today, Jews are getting it not just from certain fundamentalist Christian groups in terms of prejudice, or from the Muslim groups who were funded by these Islamic groups overseas, but Jews get it from the blacks too, from the Farrakhan's. Farrakhan, and by the way, this is a former, I don't know if you call him a friend of Obama's, or somebody who Obama worked with. You get somebody like Farrakhan, for example, who gets money from Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, who is another Muslim fundamentalist who wants to promote, the Islamic Jihad, although since he had his ass bombed, he's become much calmer. The fact of the matter is you have a guy like Farrakhan who goes after the Jews. So the Jews today in this country are still getting it. They're getting it even from the blacks who they supported for equal rights in the past during the civil rights movement. The Cheney and Schwarmer, the three civil rights workers, I don't know if you remember in the 60s, who were murdered in the South. That was the turning point when the FBI went after the Ku Klux Klan and shut them down. Two of them were Jews, okay? One of them was a black man. So, today in the United States, no, they don't take Jews in the streets and they don't throw them into concentration camps, no. But anti-Semitism in the United States is growing again. It's growing on the university campuses, and it's funded by Arab oil money, allied with radical leftist wannabe communist revolutionaries, however imaginary their plans may be, who are trying also to promote the radical revolution, as they call it, of the PLO, which was communist-inspired also during the 60s and 70s of the Cold War.
What about when the Bolshevik Revolution happened and communism was installed, the Soviet Union was installed, kind of like the North American.
So you think that was a Jewish enterprise because they had some Jews who were involved with the Bolsheviks? Is that what you're saying? I mean, you told me you're a guy with a higher than average IQ. You may have a higher than average IQ, but get your history straight. there were Jews. You know who fought the Bolsheviks? Do you know who tried to set up a democratic government in Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution? Kerensky, who was the head of the parliament there in what was Russia. Kerensky was a Jew. So here you had a Jew who was fighting the Bolsheviks, who you were accusing of being Jews. Yes, there were some people of Jewish descent among the Bolsheviks. Lenin was allegedly of Jewish descent, although he didn't give a damn about being a Jew anymore. He had long abandoned it. Karl Marx was of Jewish descent, and he was a known anti-Semite. He hated Jews. You know, you talk about upholding the U.S. Constitution. We have a democratic society here. We have a pluralistic society here. And you're jumping in bed with the most fascist, clerical fascist, certainly, organizations overseas, and you're jumping on their side against Israel, saying, we don't want foreign entanglements with Israel. Well, then tell me something. If they were trying to, if the Nazis tried to overrun Britain as they did in World War II, would you have written a letter to Roosevelt back then and said, I don't want us helping to support Britain against the Nazis because it's a foreign entanglement? Because there is no difference today. And when you attack Jews, as you're doing on your website, and I'm going to assume, Clay, that you and I have the potential to be very good friends here, okay? But I'm telling you now what I would tell another friend. I would say, and I'm not saying you're stupid, but I'm saying you're impossibly ignorant. I've gone through your website, and I've seen the anti-Semitism on your website. Now, the anti-defamation...
Wait a minute, just a minute here. You know, this is the kind of crap that I expect from you, but I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it from you. Listen to me. You keep referring to my intelligence. Well, I've got an intelligence, and I can recognize a foreign operative, and I can recognize a foreign agenda, and I can recognize unconstitutional agendas in this country. And it doesn't matter to me.
Okay, all right, so who are the foreign operatives? The Jews? Is that what you're saying? Who's the foreign
I'm talking about you. You're a classic psycho-political
I'm a foreign operative. Okay. I've been born here in the United States of America.
Yeah,
and
so what?
I support the United States.
So was the Rosenbergs. They were spies. So was Kaplan. I mean, so was there's the other spies that were Israel. Israel has a history of spying here. The Rosenbergs were executed for spying. They were
the Rosenbergs were the exact kind of people I talked about last time on your show. The Rosenbergs were people of Jewish descent who long abandoned their Judaism and became communists. That was their new God. They deserve to be executed.
We got to take a break here, and we'll take your calls. If you want to call in, call on
survivalfoodnow.com. We are living in uncertain times. Unless you've been living under a rock, you understand that indeed times are changing. Not only are we hearing about the energy and food crisis, but we're feeling the effects of both. Survivalfoodnow.com has been established by a group of concerned Americans who care about the future of our families and yours. We at survivalfoodnow.com understand there are three basic necessities for our lives: air, water, and food. We all have air. The majority has water, but only 0.2% have a food supply. So what are you going to do? There are only two choices: be prepared or don't be prepared. The security of your family may very well depend on the choice you make. SurvivalFoodNow.com's mission is not to cause fear or panic. Our mission is simply to let our fellow countrymen know they only have two choices. SurvivalFoodNow.com's knows being prepared can be a costly proposition, but it's our goal to get affordable food supplies to all our members. $50 a month auto ship will keep you prepared. SurvivalFoodNow.com. For over 15 years, the Free American has been providing all the news that the controlled media will not allow in print or the airwaves. This latest bailout is merely the next move by the banksters and elite globalists to destroy the Constitution and the American people and reduce us back to peons on the global plantation. These same men using the Israeli Mossad have done everything possible to try and destroy Clay Douglas and the Free American. Don't let them succeed. Advertise and subscribe to the Free American at freeamerican.com or call 505-908-9498. Subscribe to the online edition and get a year for only $30 printed issues or $50 for 12 issues. 25 years ago, a man named Clayton Teddington prayed for guidance and asked God what he could do to help mankind. That night, Clayton awoke to a formula written in lights on his bedroom wall. He woke his wife, but she saw nothing and told him to go back to sleep. He made her get up and write down what he saw. The next morning, he followed the formula written on his wall, and they found they had made soap. The soap was perfect. No carcinogens, no soap scum, and it cleaned so well, restaurants started using it to clean the grease off their floors and ovens. Yet it was so gentle that his neighbors started using it in their showers. A second product was born called Neutralizer, a clear, alkaline, energized water. It was the foundation for the soap, but when taken internally, it had so many health benefits it could truly be called miraculous. 6 products are now in the M2 line: soap, soap with moisturizer, neutralizer, neutralizer gel, moisturizer, and deodorant stone. The products sell for $16 each plus $5 shipping, or you can get all 6 for $100. Call 505-908-9498 or go to freeamerican.com store and order securely online. Are you suffering from election shell shock? We've got the perfect therapy, the surefire cure. Regain your sanity and restore your equilibrium by reading The Grim Shadow, a modern-day fable. A story packed full of action, suspense, betrayal, terrorism, and a dubious political election. The Grim Shadow is at its core a parable of courage, loyalty, and love. Check out the reviews at thegrimshadow.com. Little book, big story. The ultimate allegory.
And I'll tell you what I don't appreciate, Lee. I don't appreciate if I've got a question about history, if I've got a question about Israel, if I've got a question about the Zionists who were started by and funded by the Rothschilds and their effect on history, if I've got a question about Israel getting $50 billion and having from the taxpayers' dollars every year because they were victims of the Holocaust, if I've got questions about that, that doesn't mean that you and I, under normal situations, couldn't be friends. It doesn't mean that I hate Jews. It doesn't mean that I hate Muslims. It doesn't mean that I hate...
All right, look, you're burning up... all right, Clay, listen, you're burning up time here and ranting about that. And if you want us to be friends and have open discussions about this on your show, I'll be willing to do it with you every week. See, now, you just made a comment. You said Israel gets $50 billion a year from the U.S. Israel gets $3 billion a year from the U.S., so we're talking about quite a bit of hyperbole there. The $3 billion they get, half of it goes to pay off the Arabs, not to attack Israel, which might precipitate a third world war, a major conflagration. See, and this is an important mistake that you make, okay? So if you say you want to learn and you want to get an idea of the truth and you want to understand why the Anti-Defamation League has been after you, then let me explain it to you and I'll tell you. You know, you say you want to uphold the U.S. Constitution. I think that's great. So do I. But you don't uphold the U.S. Constitution by jumping in bed or verbally supporting organizations overseas that are totalitarian and want to bring down the U.S. Constitution.
I don't.
Let me finish. Part of their effort to do that consists in their plan of first bringing down Israel as a democracy in that region, and which is one of our closest allies. Okay. Now let me ask you something. I've gone through your website. I've looked at your organization there before coming on the show. You know, if you were approached by the Saudis, for example, who are the most despotic, disgusting totalitarians in the world, actually, you know, they cut heads off there. They cut hands off. They engage in they don't even let women show their faces. If you were to be approached by them and they said, you know something, we're going to give you money for your organization if you'll attack the Jews, because they're not going to put it to you this way, but it's because it helps their plan. And we want you to say, see, I heard the commercial during the break, and they said the Israeli Mossad is after Clay Douglas. Well, the Israeli Mossad isn't after you, Clay, believe me. The Mossad's got much more important things to deal with, being surrounded by 22 Arab states and 250 million Arabs that want to wipe them off the map, and with the Iranians with nuclear weapons, and with the Hezbollah, with the Hamas, and all this other stuff. I mean, if you think the Israeli Mossad is out to get you, come on. It's just not happening. And the fact is, if you thought that and you were in error, okay, then fine. And you know, and you say you want to be friends, okay, we can be friends. I'll come on your show every week if you want, and I'll discuss all this stuff. And you know, one of the things I did notice, I don't know if it was just a normal cycle of things, is you did take down the blurb for If Americans Knew on your website, because it was one of the things I was going to talk about today on the show. You know, but this business of attacking Jews and making comments about Jews and accusing Jews of dual loyalties and trying to maintain that Israel is really our enemy, and making a statement, for example, that we give $50 billion a year to Israel when we only give $3 billion. And of that $3 billion, by the way, we make a profit on it, every dime. Did you know that? And up until the Al-Qaeda years and all the problems that have been going on since the so-called peace process with the Arabs, the fact is that Israel didn't get the direct handouts from the United States. They borrowed the money and they paid it back with interest every year. Okay? Now you show me any other country that we've had in our foreign policy who we gave money to who ever gave us a profit back, because that was the fact. Things have gotten so bad now with the constant problems with the Palestinian issue going on, with the Palestinians turning down peace offers, turning down half the territory as part of a settlement and creating a state there, that Israel's financial situation has deteriorated as a result of that. There's also a boycott going on. You know, one of the things that people try to do is they want simple explanations for complex problems. And going after the Jews, it's the Jews, has been one method of creating a simple explanation for complex problems for centuries. It's cost a lot of Jewish lives, too. For Hitler, it was, you know, it was the Jews. They had in Germany a depression after World War I. It was because the Jews sold out Germany. That was the original saw. And it's starting over again here, too. Now, Saudi Arab money...
Benjamin Friedman's lecture or speech, he was Jewish. He was Jewish, and he talked about the Zionists and the Jews and their influence on World War I and World War II.
It doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean that his thesis is true, number one. And let me explain something else to you, too. You know, there are Jewish anti-Semites. Karl Marx was one. Karl Marx was of Jewish descent, although he hated the Jews, okay? In World War II, when they killed 6 million Jews, you know, they rounded them up in the Warsaw Ghetto. The Germans put together what they called the Jewish police in the ghetto. So these were Jews who were out for themselves, for whatever motivations they had. They got more food, they were treated better, and what they did was they sent the other Jews off to the camps, to the death camps. It doesn't mean that they're exemplary of all Jews. It doesn't mean that they're exemplary of the Zionist movement. You know, I deal with this every day of my life. I research what's going on, for example, with the Arabs and what they're doing in infiltration in America. And I want to emphasize, I am not talking about every Arab, but I am talking about Islamic fundamentalists allied with Arab and people of Jewish descent who are communists, not Jews specifically, because most of them have abandoned Judaism for communism. okay? And the fact is, but these are not representative of all Jews. But what's going on today is with oil money and in the university system, you have an increasing amount of anti-Semitism growing. And what they do is they have the euphemism now. They don't say Jew, they say Zionist. See, now, if you understand what Zionism is, by the way, you understand the core of Judaism. You know, I love it when I hear anti-Semites among neo-Nazis in America and among Arab irredentists or Muslim fanatics saying that, you know, real Jews aren't Zionists. Well, I got news for you. Real Jews are Zionists because the core of the religion is Zionism, is Israel. For 2,000 years, Jews at Passover and during Hanukkah, when they light the candles or they have a ceremony at the end of the Passover Seder, they said, next year in Jerusalem. The Jews were run out of Israel by the, well, they weren't completely run out because for 5,000 years they've always had a Jewish presence there. But the majority of Jews, this is how the diaspora of Jews around the world was created. The majority of Jews after the third Jewish revolt against the Romans were taken as slaves and spread throughout the Roman Empire. The idea was to destroy the Jewish nation. The Romans wanted to do that because they had more revolts and more problems with the Jews than any other country controlled by the Roman Empire. And the word Palestine, you know, we talk about Palestinians. Where that word came from was when they had the third Jewish revolt and they finally broke the Jewish will. This was at Masada, when they defeated the Zealots, for example. When they broke the control of the Jew, when the Romans finally broke the revolution, the third Jewish revolt, the emperor of Rome said, "Who was the greatest enemy throughout history of the Jews?" And he was told the Philistines. The Philistines were not Arabs. They were not the ancestors of the Palestinians like they try to claim. The Philistines were a Minoan culture that came from Crete and they came from Greece. And they said the Philistines were their biggest enemies. So the Romans changed the name of Israel to Philistia, which became bastardized in English to Palestine. And, you know, that is where the word Palestinian comes from. And the area became called Palestine. And I've got news for you. This is history. The fact is that up until 1964, when the Egyptians, when Gamal Nasser took an Egyptian named Yasser Arafat and started the Palestine Liberation Organization with him, it was only then that the Arabs started calling themselves Palestinians, because a Palestinian prior to that was a Jew. In 1948, you can go on the internet, you can research all this. In 1948, a Palestinian was a Jew. An Arab was an Arab. That's how they defined themselves. I was talking about If Americans Knew. Allison Weir, who was the head of If Americans Knew, and I want to tell you, you know, your listeners, you want to get educated on this, go to my website, stoptheism.com. You know, this is, you know, I reveal on there, and it's not conspiracy theories. I've got documentations. I've got recordings of their meetings. I've got their training manuals. These are wannabe communist revolutionaries in the United States who have allied themselves with the PLO and with the Saudis. And basically, their first goal is the destruction of Israel. Their second goal, of course, is to turn the United States, and you say you want to uphold the U.S. Constitution, into a dictatorship of the proletariat, with them as the leaders. You know, they're not likely to succeed in doing that. But I got to tell you, it's pretty scary. I wrote an article on frontpagemagazine.com. Anybody can find it on the web. It's Solidarity with Terror by Lee Kaplan. What I did was somebody told me that this group was having a training meeting to get new recruits. And I had already been involved with pro-Israel activity at UC Berkeley at that time. So I thought, well, how am I going to get into this meeting? I'm dying to see this training meeting and seeing what they're teaching them and telling them. And what I did was I dyed my hair black and my eyebrows black, and I colored my skin, and I changed my voice, and I went in as a Pakistani to their meeting. And what I expected to find at this meeting was a bunch of college kids who, you know, were going to be fed a line of propaganda and, you know, about the, you know, the glorious revolution and the Jews and all this other stuff. and basically be useful idiots. What I found shocked me. What I found was a cabal of people, and some of them were of Jewish ancestry. Again, they didn't care about being Jews. It meant nothing to them. They would be glad to destroy the Jews. Allied with Arabs and Muslims and communists and all these people, and they sat in a cabal together, and they discussed being revolutionaries. That was their big thing. They wanted to bring down the United States, and they wanted to bring down Israel. And, you know, this is, if you're looking for conspiracies, this is a real conspiracy, okay? I don't think they're going to be successful, but at the same time, what they do is they put out false information to people like yourself, which ultimately, apparently, has a certain amount of success. You get
everybody has two sides. There's two sides to every story.
No, let me explain something to you. There are two sides in a discussion, but there's only one truth, okay? There's only one truth. See, this is what's going on in the colleges today, which is very bad. They have what they call academic freedom, which is supposed to be any scholastic idea goes, and that itself is a noble pursuit of education. But fabricating one side of the argument and making it up is not truth. An example, for example, you just stated to me, albeit even if you were upset and it was hyperbole, $50 billion we give to Israel every year. Okay. Now, I'm sure when you said it, you believed it. I'm not saying it was evil on your part. You believed it, but it's a blatant, barefaced lie. It's not, or not a lie, a blatant, barefaced misinformation. It's not true. I can tell you that it's $3 billion a year. Okay, and of the $3 billion, half of it we give it to Israel. Half of it Israel takes and pays off the Egyptians not to start a war. That's where that money goes. And you know, you were convinced. There's two sides to every argument. You would go into a debate as you know, let's say you're a cipher and you don't know about the Middle East conflict. So you would go into a debate, and there would be one guy sitting on one side of the table who's a Palestinian, say, and a Jew sitting on, say he's a Jew, or a pro-Israel person sitting on the other side of the table. And you're also under the assumption that when you see these two people, that both of them are going to be honest and tell you the truth during their arguments. There's two sides, right? See, now I can tell you that the ISM, and when I say ISM again, there isn't an official ISM. That's what they call themselves in solidarity against America and against Israel. They go by a myriad number of groups. They're like an octopus. If the government were to close down one of them, they just go over to the next group that they already belong to anyway, and they continue their operations. This is how Arafat operated. That's how the Muslim fundamentalists in Algeria operated against the French. It's a revolutionary tactic. Getting back to the meeting, what the ISM does, though, is they stage debates, supposedly, about the Israel-Palestine.
Hold on just a moment. We got to take a break. Be right back, and you want to call in our call-in number?
All right, we're out of here. That was Lee Kaplan that you were listening to. Think we got the whole thing on Blog Talk. Got most of it here on YouTube. This was from last year, sometime last year, I guess. God bless you all. Thanks for listening. Come on, hang up, son of a bitch.